right, everybody, here we are. It's episode 27 of the podcast you're listening to right now, which is called what, Tom?
Eat, drink, and be scary.
And we're doing it from where, Tonya?
Everywhere. From home.
Not everywhere from home.
Well,
and
all of our homes are in different places, so it's kind of like everywhere.
We're in all of your homes.
Yes.
And Ryan's in someone's closet right now. One of you lucky listeners are going to get Ryan in your closet right now. And with us today, we have the people that are normally with you. We've got Ryan and myself, Bill, and Tonya, and Tom, and then Liberty's back. And Liberty's with us here and there, and we love having Liberty with us. And today we have a special guest, Gary, who we're going to say hi, Gary.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Gary.
I'm great.
Hello.
And I guess we could say that Gary is Tanya's father, who is now the second family member she's had on here, which is actually pretty exciting.
I am.
Which is actually two more than anyone else has had on here.
Right.
Wait till you'll have her mom.
Oh, that one will be all sorts of interesting.
I'm excited about that one.
Oh.
And I guess what we're going to be talking about, the biggest thing we're going to talk about right now is the fact that the reason why we're all in our homes right now is because it's the quarantine, it's the stay-at-home order, and that some people are referring to as, I guess, a sense, the end of the world, apocalyptic, whatnot. And that's what the theme of today is going to talk about, which is essentially the end of the world. Whether it's now, it's whether how people are perceiving this as to be apocalypse or not to be. I don't know. So anyway, let's start with that. So first of all, I want to kind of start with Ryan, and I want to get some insight on this because I know, Ryan, you've got some background on this a little bit, some insight when we talked about it. And when I say, hey, it's the end of the world, what's your response?
Well, my response would be, do you want my logical response or do you want me to actually tell you what I'm thinking?
We want Ryan's response.
Yay!
So I think
have logical responses.
Okay, so you both told me you wanted different things. So
Bill.
So here's what I think. I think that the coronavirus is obviously important and it's serious, but I also think that there's a lot of dumb people not listening, and we're kind of doing a self-fulfilling prophecy here because we're having people dying from this, but no one is really caring enough to stay home. So what's happening is you're getting these people who are just spreading the virus because they have nothing better to do. Now, whether I think that that's the end of the world or the apocalypse is completely different, because the apocalypse actually translates as revealing divine information. And that's why John in the Bible, what Revelations were, they were letters that he sent to 7 different churches talking about the end of days, or what we would become to know as the apocalypse. Now, I don't think that that's happening. We don't see any of the biblical signs or the 7 plagues or anything along those lines, but what we are seeing are a lot of people being stupid. And that's pretty much like every other day. The only difference is now people are getting sick. And unless that changes, it's only going to get worse. So that's what I think is going on right now.
Ryan, or someone, can you remind me and maybe some other people, what are the 7 signs?
Well, the ones that are most common are you're going to be hearing about, like the rivers turning to blood and the sun getting very, very hot and the temperatures rising. And then after that happens, you're going to have to deal with the waters and the rivers drying up, especially in the Euphrates is what they were talking about there. And then you're going to have a global earthquake, and then
Earthquake.
Yes.
We had that.
Those are the main
not
ones.
global, but we had another one.
So I thought the Kardashians might be one of the signs. Am I wrong?
No, that was the crabs and not the locusts.
Okay.
False idols.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
So Ryan, I would like to ask you a question. You said people are being stupid in the corona, the way they react to that, and I totally agree with that. But you did say that you don't think that this is one of the signs. You don't think that famine or pestilence is a sign that the end of the age coming?
Well, I do think that those things are correlated with the biblical end of days, but right now the reason why we're seeing those is because people would rather go out and be on the beach with their friends rather than some active sign of God that no one has any correlation or ability to stop. You know,
So do
Well,
you think that
right,
maybe
but
God is
I mean,
using those people
I'm sorry.
to bring
either
do you
means
think
to
that
the
maybe
end.
God is using those people to bring about the pestilence, the famine, those
See,
type things?
Right.
That's just the direction of causality. That's just saying that, you know, these people are doing something selfishly, so therefore it must be God doing so. That's why we've had so many false prophets before. You know, back when Y2K was a big deal, and they talked about, you know, all the computers that were going to be setting over, and people. The reason why everyone panicked is because they were worried about their money and everything else. You know, and that was a big sign of the end of days too. And not once in the Bible did they talk about computers, right? So it's really just it's based on perspective and how people perceive things. Yeah. Okay. So we can say these people are going to the beaches of Miami and they're getting everybody sick, and now they go and they kill a bunch of people because, you know, they're spreading this disease, and that can be related to biblical terms, but only if you look at it through the concept of you're looking for biblical information, right? Because these
Right.
people, if you would have told them, hey, don't go out to the beach because it's killing all the fish, they won't give a shit. They're still going to go to the beach, right? It doesn't
Yep.
matter who's dying from it. It's just they're going to do what they want to because that's how they feel they should act. So I don't know. Does one lead to the other? It's possible, but right now I think that anything can be a sign of anything as long as you have some knowledge and the ability to perceive it as such. So
you're not saying this doesn't exist, this pandemic,
right. No, it
coronavirus,
does. It does exist.
COVID-19. You are just saying that potentially people can attribute what's happening to
Any boogeyman they want to.
origin. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, yeah. Thank you.
Exactly. I mean, and we've talked about that before, right? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's where, you know, we know people are getting sick, but we also know that people aren't staying inside. They are not social distancing. They are still doing the stupid crap that they were doing 4 months ago and wondering why things are getting worse. It's because they're not taking any action to actually prevent it from happening.
I think a
So
lot of
that-
those, the time frame though, the time frame was so short. So you referred to the Y2K. The Y2K, we knew for years that it was going to be a problem. And people say, oh, it wasn't a problem. But what people don't understand, it was a problem. And hundreds of thousands of people worked on this to make it not a problem because we had this huge time frame. And back in 2004, when people first started saying, you know, there's a very good chance we're going to have a pandemic, people thought, well, I don't want to think about it. I'd rather not. Let's worry about it when it happens. So because there was no time frame of saying, if we sat there in 2004 and said, by the way, we're all going to get this thing in 2020, it's going to make us really sick, we would spend a lot of time doing it. Math is math. So when we knew that Y2K was happening, we worked to make it not happen. On this one,
So who got us through the 2012 Mayan pandemic, you think, that end of the world thing? We've known about that for like a long time.
I think what happened is the Mayan stone, nobody flipped it over and realized the calendar was still on the other side too, and it just kept going.
Okay,
So,
here-
like,
They-
people
they
would
I
worked
saw
on
something about
calendar.
being dyslexic. It's 2021. Next year, we're all going to be underwater.
if it's 2021, then we're in a lot of trouble.
Well, maybe they just got
No.
tired of making 200 years of calendars.
chiseled in stone.
So
That's all they were
yeah,
contracted
no,
to make.
I'm not even going to say that out loud. But okay. So I was whatever. I remember Y2K and knew people who were, you know, I don't wanna say
Freaking out.
ordering, but you know, panicking a little bit and getting gas masks and all of those things. And then guess what happened when the clock turned? Nothing.
Well,
And I
because of
understand what
preparation.
you're saying is that it's because so many people knew in advance and worked to change that and to make sure that it wasn't a big thing. How did this become different? If this, I mean, we heard about Y2K for I don't know, months or years, and SARS and bird flu and all of those things. Like, how does this somehow become something that nobody expected?
I don't
Well,
know if it was some.
scientifically,
Go ahead, Tom.
go ahead. No, well, scientifically, they didn't expect any of those things to come up. I mean, we've known about them. The problem is that potentially that this flu like incubated in a different country and then kind of grew and mutated before we even got to do anything about it. Whereas those other pandemics, scientists were on it beforehand and then came up with an antidote pretty quickly. Whereas it's taking them a long time to come up with this one. So they're just kind of subjecting it to different tests for a long time. So they closed that window a lot sooner on those other ones, I think, because they were able to get on it a lot quicker. That's the story that we're getting fed by the government.
Okay.
I think there was definitely knowledge that there was a pretty severe pandemic happening months and months ago. And it's like, oh, well, it's on the other side of the world. No big deal. It's not going to come here.
We're not going to let it come here.
And the way that it was handled is it wasn't. It was basically just, well, it'll be fine. No big deal. We'll deal with it. And
We're Americans.
Exactly. And when it did finally hit the States, we already saw what it was doing to places all over the world. And then we were like, oh, well, it's here. What do we do? How do we make it stop? Like, well, you shut things down, and it took forever for anyone to actually make that decision to be like, all right, well, let's shut it down. Like, well, let's feel it out. Let's make sure, it doesn't do whatever it's going to do. What happened is we basically watched it come across the seas to our shores and then acted like idiots, like we had no idea what was happening when we knew exactly what was happening, just nothing was being done about it. And people are still acting like nothing's happening.
You can blame the media a lot on that too, because you've got so many different conflicting stories where younger people are not getting sick as much, and then you realize that they are getting sick at the same rate and they're killing other people because they're around people who have heart conditions or they're around people who are older. And so I know that most people in society, they can hear something and only really understand a third of it. So what they're hearing is, hey, we're young, we're okay, we're not going to get it, and then they go out and they have that combined with people who don't care because they don't think, okay, well, 85% of the people who get it, it doesn't bother them, right? They don't understand that 15% of 700 billion people is still a lot of people, right? And they also are looking at the concept of, hey, it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen to us, because we're young, we're fit, we're healthy. And that leads to a lot of issues because now you've got people like, you have no idea how many people I've talked to that are like, God will protect us from the coronavirus and we're not going to get it. So they're just going to do whatever they want. Well,
perceived immunity is what had all pandemics and wars. Really.
Well, here's the thing, though. The Bible also tells you, God helps who help themselves, right? So if you're not helping yourself by staying 6 feet away from somebody or staying in your house and you get it, you can't blame God. You can blame yourself for being stupid. And I just feel like you're trying to put too much trust in false information, and then when it happens, you wonder why it happened and blame everyone else for it, and that's not the way it should be.
So we're really talking about the pandemic that's happening, but we're also talking about why are we even talking about end of time because of the pandemic, right?
Right.
That's kind of the question. So I would like
my social life is dead, Gary. It died.
I would like to take this conversation in that direction. So we know that we were talking about the things that will come to pass, and one of them is the four horsemen, if we know about those. And the four horsemen, the fourth horse is the pale horse. And what we expect to see from that is a quarter of the earth, we're told a quarter of the earth will be killed by either sword or famine or disease or wild animals. So if you're somebody that's looking at that and you're waiting for these things to happen, of course you're going to look and say, oh, wait, disease, that matches what's happening today, coronavirus. So why would we look at this disease that we're seeing, this pandemic that we're seeing, and say, well, this could be a stepping stone towards the end. Well, it's because people are looking and saying, and we're looking for those things to happen, right? Like a checklist. This has happened, this has happened, this has happened. So that's why we're looking at the pandemic and saying, could this be one of those stepping stones that's leading us there? Because the pale horse is truly something that's going to happen if you're looking, and people are truly looking for it. So this would key us to say, is this one of those stones that we're at, those markers?
What are the four horsemen? Because I was trying to guess them earlier today, and I'm pretty sure I guessed them all wrong.
And I think she said one was the Kardashians, I think. But
so one of the first horseman that he talks about is the white horse, and it's interesting because the rider is given a bow and a crown, and yet if you think a bow, no arrows, right? It's a weapon, but with no force with that weapon, and he's given a crown, and he goes out to win battles and gain victory. Well, if you've got a weapon, if you've got a gun with no bullets or a bow with no arrows, how many battles are you going to win? So a lot of people think that maybe the battles that we're talking about from the white horse is setting the stage for what's coming. In other words, choose your side, either on this side or you're on this side. And I think we see a lot of that happening in the world today. People are kind of taking sides. So
there's divisiveness everywhere.
Exactly. So the white horse is kind of what we see, in my opinion, and all of I'm giving is just my opinion, right? But that we kind of see that's what's happening today. The second horse is the red horse, which he's given authority to take peace from the earth, whether it's through war and slaughter, and he's given a sword. So now he actually has a way to kill all these people instead of just dividing the people. The third horse is the black horse, which is basically famine. He talks about scales and a loaf of bread and, just famine in the land. And then the pale horse that we talked about. So those are the four horsemen. So all of those things, if a famine broke out, people would say, oh, this is one of those signs we're looking for,
I actually have something kind of interesting to talk about that. I read an article today that we, meaning the eastern part of the United States, is basically about to have a mega drought, the biggest one in the last 1,200 years. They've been leading up to, we've noticed droughts have been happening a lot lately, but the way that things are kind of projected is that we're within the next 20 years going to be in one of the biggest droughts since prehistoric records. And the only reason why they can track all of this is they're tracking the rings on trees and other things like that, where they're able to follow that information. So when you are talking about the kind of end of times, there's not really a calendar as far as how long it'll take for that stuff to happen. So when you say that famine is one of them, and knowing that we could be quickly approaching a huge drought, and even though it is just a portion of North America that could be experiencing it, that's still something that's relevant. And I also have another thought is, obviously it would need to be a global thing, because end of times means the end of the entire world and not just one country. So at what point do we look at the famine that has been kind of existing, mostly caused by man, but in Africa, where there's tribes and people that are starving, that's been going on forever. And have we ever seen that as a sign of the times?
So I thought with this, though, and a lot of it is going to be interpretation. So one thing, Gary, when you say that a percentage of people will die by sword, and how much do we take that literally and how much do we take by interpretation? If you say literally people are going to be killed by a sword, or you say the sword represents blank. And then again, if you say, well, that way there's a time span. When people say, well, we don't specifically mean this date, we mean beyond this period. It could be a millennial, it could be a couple hundred years. And I'm curious your thought on that.
So sword to me is just a weapon, killed by weapons, where we compare it to the white horse, where he didn't have a real weapon. He had a bow, but no arrows. So those battles weren't won with weapons. if you talk about war, like we have, World War I, World War II, whatever war, the actual weapons are used in those wars. So I see the distinction there. I'm not sure on the other one. I find it interesting. They use Matthew 24 a lot, the signs of the end. They ask Jesus, what are going to be the signs? And he tells them the signs, and he says, when you see all of these things take place, he doesn't say, this is the end of the world. He says, this is the beginning of things, such as, and he compares it to birth pain. When you get pregnant, you have a birth pain, and it may be one, and it's not very bad. You just have one. And then as time goes on, as it comes close to the time to birth, you have many birth pains and you have severe birth pain. And so I think we judge time by how close are we to birth? Well, how many birth pains are you having? What are your contractions? How severe are they, right? We use that as a sign.
As humanity, yeah, we see the biblical end as like one big event, when actually the Bible says, it doesn't put a time frame on the judgment. Right. It could be drawn out. Yeah, absolutely.
So you can also
see steps.
You can also use the sword, in a symbol too, where there are two sides to every story. There's a spectrum where you've got good versus evil. You've got the separation of the flock, the people who believe in, the Antichrist is there versus the true source of divine power. We see, like we talked about, the first horseman is there to essentially separate the group, while the second one is trying to, force those people to fight for something, whether they believe in it or not, because now they have to choose sides, right? Yeah. And then I don't know if you guys remember, but I think it was 2015, there was a bunch of YouTube videos about everyone was hearing, the horns of Gabriel and all these sounds like trumpets sounding all over the world, and everyone thought it was the end of times.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And like we've talked about, where spiritual time is different from material time, has it been happening since then? Has it been happening for the last 2 years? Has that been happening since Trump was elected? Right? There's just a lot of different things that can start the process if everyone's looking at them as the start of the process.
I think a lot of that, though, is if you say identifying something that's mysterious that you don't understand. So it would be the same thing with the Bigfoot sighting. If I tell you that over by Bogus Basin that I saw Bigfoot, and then now 20 people will say, like, wait a minute, I saw something, I didn't know what it was, that must be a Bigfoot. And I think that goes with the same thing when you're hearing the sound of Gabriel and things like that. If you want to start identifying something that somebody doesn't understand, and I can't make an educated opinion on my own, I'm just going to absorb yours. So when you start that mass hysteria by giving a somewhat in your own logical explanation, that's when that kind of stuff happens. So now when you say the end of times, when people say, then clearly most of us here are in Idaho, and we have that earthquake, and we'll look at each other and we go, well, it's the end of times, haha, LOL. And then all of a sudden you start hearing about a volcano, from a helicopter. But people are filming that, and they're saying, well, now there's this. So if I can't piece it together logically, I'm going to listen to somebody say the end of times. And that's where I think we come to a lot of this, where people are saying, literally, like they are freaking out right now saying this is the end of times. And we've had.
Well, go ahead, Bill.
No, I was going to say, though, this is a thing that I'm going to talk about a little bit is I didn't grow up knowing about the Spanish influenza. I didn't know that there was a time right after World War I that 50 million people died. Clearly, none of us were alive then. But I didn't know about it. I didn't know about that growing up. I didn't find out about it until I was in college, and then it was almost a footnote. And people say, like, we're living history right now. We're living through history, but are we? Are we living through that? How did people perceive that during the Spanish influenza? The Spanish flu hit, did people say, well, it's the end of the world? Or they just put on their masks and live their business? I don't know. And then you want to think back to the Black Plague or things like that. I mean, I know, Ryan, you've got a pretty good history of pandemic type end of world scenarios through history. How do they differ from now, and how did they we could sit there and say SARS or the Ebola, stuff like that. Did people
Or,
jump up and start
Spanish
screaming?
flu, right? Like, if
Yeah.
you look at it, there's a pretty good pattern. About every 100 years or so, there's some sort of pandemic, right? And there are conspiracy theorists that say, oh, it's aliens, right? They're trying to,
Well, it is.
yeah, they're
I
trying
was
to,
actually going to say, sorry, like there's only two ways. Like Dave was saying, like you can steer it toward a religious view of things where you're trying to look and piecemeal everything out as the beginning of something because of religion. And if you're going to look back and say that there's one way that they're all different, I'm not sure I could tell you, but if there's one way that they're all the same, all of these pandemics and all of these wars, as this is going to be the apocalypse, absolutely every time a sect of religion has said this is going to be the apocalypse. That's the one continuous thing between all of that stuff, is somebody religiously is saying this is the end because of A, B, and C.
well, eventually
Now-
someone's going to get it right,
Well, right, and eventually you're right. What the, existing now are two different things. So I think, like you were saying, like the aliens or Illuminati or however you want to put it. There's the Georgia Guidestones, right? They exist. They've been there since 1980 or something like that, and they pretty much have this unexplained carving that says the world's going to be cooled down to 500 million people, which is a lot considering we've got billions. You know what I mean? That's a lot. That's way more than the quarter you're talking about with the White Horse, or
Right.
that's a lot more than any war. I mean, if you think about it, World War II killed half of the world's population, and we haven't had a culling like that in the United States or the world in pretty much since then. Since Vietnam, nobody's died in mass like that for a long time. So, and we're kind of missing that as a world. It's absolutely, we're pushing, in my view, growing up, it's never has going to been like the world's going to end because of climate change. It's going to end because people are stupid. Like you said, it's either going to be because of political reasons. We're going to cause a huge war and eliminate ourselves, because that's history. And that just keeps repeating. Or there's going to be, like now, what they've been warning us for 25 years. There's going to be some kind of virus that's going to mutate that we're not going to keep on top of, because penicillin's 100 years old, and it's the best we can do. And it's going to get in front of us.
That's
Here's
exactly.
I just have to step in for a second. I am not as well educated on like the history of pandemics or any kind of epidemic, but here's something that keeps crossing my mind. I remember Heaven's Gate, and I remember Y2K, and I remember all of these things, and so much of the media, or at least some of the media during those times, was focused on, is this the end of the world? But and maybe I'm not reading the sources that are covering this, but I haven't seen media during this epidemic about COVID-19, coronavirus, that talks about this is the end of the world. I see a lot of, articles about how this will change the world. But to me, this feels a little different, because no one is saying this is the end. No one is drinking the Kool-Aid or wearing their white Nikes and laying in a bed.
I think
It's very different.
I think part of that is from media sources, the sensationalism of some things, making them out to be bigger than they are, makes people want to watch. And I mean,
right.
it's all about ratings. And so when people are looking around like, oh shit, this is real, like this is everywhere, this is happening, they don't want to say, is this the end of the world? Because that might be an actual
because this is
thing
real
for them.
I mean, the media, sensationalized Heaven's Gate and all of these other things to a degree that it consumed our thoughts and everything that we read for a certain point of time. But I think, Tonya, what you say is actually really true. The difference is that this affects like all of us and everyone.
Well, things like Heaven's Gate and Jonestown and even like Waco, Texas, with David Koresh, those were things that were after the fact, where they were going on during the time. Like, people didn't know about Heaven's Gate until after it was done. They walked in and found a bunch of people with quarters in their shoes with some Nikes, and they found it afterwards. The same thing with Jonestown. They walked in and found these people dead. Waco, Texas was a thing, but it was those boiled down to one thing. One person with a charisma to convince everybody else of what they said was real.
Yeah, the Antichrist.
Is this like
and that was
Storm Area 51?
Well, but
okay, so hold on.
Go ahead.
The one thing, I've got a couple things I want to say real quick. So you talk about everyone having one charismatic leader, right? That's what the whole end of days apocalypse is about, is the one charismatic leader being the person who's going to be the false prophet, or in this case, the Antichrist, right? And, evil, if that's what you want to call it, doesn't have a body structure or a facial type, right? The idea behind it is, as long as they can convince others what they want and allow the idea to spread, it's going to happen one way or the other, whether we try to fight it or not. Because an idea, if you can convince someone that it's their idea, is the hardest thing to eradicate, because they start putting belief behind it. That's where, have you guys heard of Gene Dixon? Do you guys know who that is?
Yeah.
No.
Gene Dixon was a psychic who predicted the JFK assassination. And she said before she died that the Armageddon was going to happen in 2020. Now, Gene Dixon also was a popular psychic, and that's where the Gene Dixon effect comes from, where if you have 100 predictions, right, and only 3 come true, but they're really, really big ones, everyone's going to go like, oh my God, well, she knew what she was talking about. She predicted the assassination of JFK, so therefore when she thinks it's going to happen in 2020, it must be happening, right? And that's what we talked about. Tom and Bill and everyone else, we've talked about group hysteria and how you can put an idea in someone's head, and that psychic driving leads to lots of other ideas and lots of other people believe in something. And unfortunately, we also live in a time where people don't really do research either, right? And Bill, you've mentioned that, where you feel like, oh, look, it's a Bigfoot. It was tall and brown, and I couldn't tell what it was. So because it's blurry and brown, it's a Bigfoot, right? And everyone started saying, oh, it's a Bigfoot that we saw, or it's a Bigfoot, like on the Reddit, right? You can give someone information that makes sense, but because it doesn't fit their agenda, they just disregard it. And I feel like that's...
No, and I totally agree. I guess my big question is, and maybe I'm forgetting something, but why, out of all of these other things that have happened, why is, I mean, this is very, very well covered. What's happening now, this pandemic is very, very well covered. But I don't see articles or media talking about how this might be, a sign of the apocalypse or the end of the world. What?
No, not in the media, but I do see it in public opinion. I see that coming out. And like Gary was saying, they're only really putting it as a marker of the beginning, not really as, oh crap, we're going to die now. And you can kind of see that in forms of pandemic. Like there was some mass hysteria, absolutely. Like nobody was out looting stores, but they were absolutely out like hoarding things, which is hysteria.
And here's another thing too.
Actually, that's super valid, like toilet paper.
Here's something else to think about too. It's like 150 years ago, like we didn't have the social media presence that we do today, right? So when you heard about something that was affecting the world and that it was going to happen, it could have been solved already, but you didn't know about it, so you're still dealing with all the hysteria. Nowadays, people are too busy looking at cat videos on YouTube to give a crap whether or not, 35 more people died or 1,000 people died or whatever.
Yeah, people didn't know during the Black Plague that, 100 miles away, 400 people are going through the same thing they were going through. A lot of people thought that was regional, and they didn't know. And plus, at the same time, they were afraid to travel, because if you were sick, you weren't going to go to another town that was sick. You were going to stay. So news didn't travel the same way. But the thing of it is now I feel is this: we love to share information. I love to, if I know something you don't know, Ryan, I want to tell you.
Yeah,
but text you and tell you.
Doesn't have to be correct, and that's what I'm trying to say.
And that's what I'm saying. It's an uneducated opinion. It's the same reason on social media when somebody shares an article that's not true. And the first thing when I see something, I research it. We live in this society now where we watch a movie and we like the actor. We want to know what else he's in, and then we search for his name, find out 4 other movies he was in, and then all of a sudden we get in this rabbit hole of collecting data just for our own sanity just by watching this one movie. Not everybody does that. So if I can't form my own educated opinion and I see somebody post an article that, that Obama created this virus in his kitchen, and I go, that's real. I got to share that with my 300 friends, and I share it. And now I'm another person that can't form an educated opinion, and they see that, and I share it, and I like it, and I forward it, and this and that. That's the world that we live in, and that's the people that can't that can't research things and share it. And that's where the apocalyptic view pops up. So it's that one person that makes a valid point to somebody that can't make their own valid point to say, by the way, we've had an earthquake, a volcano is happening here, the plague's going on, it's the end of the world, and now suddenly people are saying, well, then it must be the end of the world because I had my friend say it, and they're smart, and they post stuff.
I would like to comment on your statement, Liberty, that why are we not seeing that in the media? And I would say to you, I see it every day. So obviously we're watching different medias, right? And I think maybe that goes back to there are 2 different views on this, 2 different sides. One side is headed this direction, and their focus and their vision is on whatever direction they're headed. I'm on another side, and my focus and vision's on this other side. So there's not a day that goes by that I don't turn my TV on and I watch stuff that are about the end of times or the signs that are happening. So I would say I'm on channel 3, and the reason you're not seeing it is because you're on channel 2.
And Gary, that's a really good point.
Actually, like very affecting. I didn't think of that, but
either way, it doesn't matter what channel you're on. Either channel's going to have a boogeyman.
I mean, I'm influenced by and because of analytics and digital marketing and things.
Well, everybody is.
I am seeing opinions and friends and things that people who think like I do.
Right.
That's a really, really good point.
Bill's in marketing. Or you should know better than anybody else, Bill, that it kind of links back to what we're saying. And it doesn't matter what channel you're on. There's going to be a boogeyman, somebody who we want to peg something on because we're humanity, and that's what we do. It's somebody else's fault. If we don't have something to blame it on, we're going to drive ourselves crazy. And that other part of that is, like, we sell something. It's got to be exciting, and it's got to be relatable, and then you'll buy into it. You should know that as somebody who does advertising. That's all you really have to be.
I'm going to sell you my idea with bias, is what it's all going to boil down to. Is because I'm going to let you see my view.
It sounds good to you.
It is going to be. Sorry, Ryan, go.
You can affect people too by putting messages in things that they don't understand that they're perceiving, right? Like I remember there was a scientific study where if you look at Disney movies, all the villains have more angular lines versus all of the heroes who have more rounded lines, because people tend to associate horns and pointy things with evil. And, that's very subliminal marketing, right? And it's subliminal thought processing too. It's like hypnosis on a media type level. And I know, Tom, you and I have talked about this before, where if you want to get someone to think like you do or think in the way you want them to, you don't have to say anything. You just have to take something they believe in and change it slightly to your opinion, and
they feed it back to them.
Yeah, it's psychic driving. Right now, on the concept of the end of times or the end of days and the apocalypse, right? First of all, if we talk about Nostradamus, right, where he had maybe 1,000 predictions, and let's just say 10% of those came true, right?
Well, when you want to say 10%, I got to interject. Vague interpretations. 10% of his predictions.
Right, but you're right.
Somebody goes, the mole will crawl from the ground and see a shiny sun, and people go like, oh, well, that must mean this, and I'm going to connect the dots. So now Notre Dame is true.
And that's
so
exactly
when you say
what I'm
10%,
trying to say.
that's yeah.
Right. That's what I'm trying to say. Those 10%, let's say there's, I'm going to break this down in just small numbers so it's easier to understand. Let's say that there are 500 people, and out of those 500 people, they only hear 10% of his 1,000 predictions, and they just happen to be the ones that are true. Those 500 people are going to go, holy crap, everything he says is the truth, and then that's just what they're going to tell everybody, whether, like Bill said, those predictions are vague, like, there's a shiny bird in the sky and it hits, 2 tower buildings. Well, who cares, right? And here's the thing, too. Notre Dame has been dead so long that you can just basically say, oh, he totally said that, and people are going to go, holy crap, I've heard of him, right? It must be one of those things.
Well, even Edgar Cayce wasn't even that long ago, and he was right about like World War II, if you wanted to relate it that way and stuff like that. So people were looking at him for the 20th century, right? And he was wrong about his apocalypse predictions, and now you don't hear about him at all. So, but you better believe that those people who were thinking that Edgar Cayce's apocalypse day was going to happen and didn't move on to somebody else thinking that some new apocalypse was going to happen, because people are sheep, and that's how they are. And I mean, not to downplay religion or any other chosen deity or how you want to think, but that's how we all think. Really, it comes down to, I think, man's personal fear of being destroyed ourselves and not having anything to be able to do with it. In Christianity, the whole out for if you're going to die and this is the apocalypse is, but I can still be saved and redeemed, right? In Hinduism, there is really no apocalypse. It's just cyclical time, and you're going to get judged and recycled. So we're the only ones in the world who think that way anyway. And we only think that way, I think, because we're so damn scared about what happens after we die. And so we invented it.
There's a couple tribes. I don't remember where they're at, so I don't know if this is relevant or not. But they each believe that if you're not a part of their tribe, you're going to hell, right? Whatever hell that is. So based on that, unless one of them is right, everyone is going to hell because no one shares part of the same, correlation to both tribes. And
there are Christian religions who believe that too.
Well, exactly. But what people don't understand about the coronavirus in particular is this is just the beginning, right? Now that it's here, unless they have a cure for it, that doesn't mean it's not going to get worse in the winter. It doesn't mean
the virus is just going to get worse. Absolutely.
It doesn't mean
scientifically.
Exactly. Next year it's going to mutate. I'll tell you what, you see a lot of these. I watched I Am Legend last night because it was on and Danny and I watched it. But, they talked about a cure for cancer that ended up having some sort of rabies-like effect, right? Rabies have been around a long time, and it's another disease that affects every host that it becomes in contact with, right? But no one freaked out about it as much as they do the coronavirus. And it's essentially, the coronavirus is essentially on the same level as that because it can affect just about anything, right? But what people don't understand is there's a lot of these diseases that people haven't cured. I mean,
Brian, and I get that because I've been having those same thoughts and feelings, but the sheer amount of people that are infected and the deaths, is that still comparable to rabies or, I don't know, the flu?
To any other flu that we've had? Absolutely. It's only really affecting people who are absolutely not ready for it, and only really high numbers of density population where people are super packed together.
Are you saying it's only affecting people who aren't ready for it? So the 25-year-old who passed away because of coronavirus just wasn't ready for it?
Well,
I'm not trying to instigate or pick.
Let me ask you that, Liberty. I saw news today that said that the most affected people in Idaho right now are between 19 and 25. with coronavirus. And if that's the case, because everything you heard previously was that it was going to kill old people and children, right? That most people that were healthy age were going to be fine. It's just a flu. Now, they're the people who are affected. I would say the only reason that would make sense in my mind is because the people who are children and old are prepared and not going out. And the 19 to 25
hold on. So, but behind that, real quick, I'll say I know for a fact that when you say that the age between like 18 and 25, the reason why they're the ones that are infected because they're the ones that are not listening, because they think, and I actually know this for a fact because my daughter, who's saying I can't get infected, and she's hanging out with all her friends, and she's the one that's going out socializing. So when you have people at we're old of an age that when we heard about this, we're not 100, but we still said, well, gosh darn, we better hide inside and be smart, and we protected ourselves. So when you say a younger generation is the one, they're not. It's not that because of their age group's more susceptible to getting sick. It's because their ignorance and the fact that they go, well,
right. It made them less ready and less prepared.
You know what my daughter said? My daughter said, "I'm stronger than the flu," and she hung out with all her other 22-year-old friends.
Which is what I talked about earlier, where the media at the beginning said that those people of that age don't really have to worry about it, which is not true. Everyone has the ability to get infected with this disease. It's affecting people who have conditions or are older.
So there's another thing. There's another thing you think about this.
Sinners.
When we say, this is a thing we have to really, really consider. Testing's been piss poor in the United States. So when we say tested positive, that is such a small percentage of people who have actually been infected. So you're talking about an age group of people who are probably have great insurance and are going in and getting tested. Has anybody here been tested? Raise your hand.
No.
Ryan. Okay, Ryan has been tested. How'd it turn out? All right, you don't have to tell us your answer. But anyway.
No, I'll tell you what happened. I had a fever, and I went to bed and woke up and it was gone. And then it came back later that day. And I went to bed and woke up and it was gone. And since I had the boys coming over, and because Danny has a heart condition, I wanted to make sure that I didn't have something like that, because I work in retail. Tom, he and I work as barbers, so we're constantly in people's faces. And I had strep throat, right? So it's just one of those things that the symptoms for this are like the symptoms for 100 other damn things.
Yeah, my buddy had bronchitis. I had a bad head cold. I mean,
I had a bad flu prior to this. I got hit hard for like 4 days. So anybody here other than Ryan, and Ryan, by the way, you could be positive now. We don't know. All of us here could be infected and not know.
You look positive.
I'm always positive.
But we all could test positive right now for COVID-19 and not know. And we could have just survived.
But here's the thing, though. We're also in our homes, not going anywhere either, right?
Well, but then again, today, like, I got in an elevator to go downstairs, and I live on the fifth floor, gets on the third floor, door opens, I see somebody that I know that used to be my neighbor that now is on the third floor. He just walks in. And I thought, well, we don't live in that world now. You're supposed to wait. I wait. If there's somebody on the elevator, I'll catch it. And then
but then you go in there and you touch all the damn buttons anyway.
No, and I'm now 2 feet away. I elbow everything, but I'm 2 feet away. I'm 2 feet away from two people having a conversation with me about what life, how are you doing? How are you doing? Let's all talk
about this coronavirus, huh?
Yeah, I don't know. And then I go to walk to the bank, and there's a group of people talking that won't move out of the way for me to go around to go to the bank, just to hit the ATM to put some checks in. And I think, well, this is now this second could have it. I don't know. I could be infected right now, and maybe I don't show symptoms, and maybe I do. But so when you say these are the people that are testing positive, these are the people that are getting tested, and that's the number one thing to look at. We can't look at that. When you look at a country comparing Italy to Germany, and you have Italy who's testing everybody, and Germany is like, I don't know, we'll test who we want to test. You can't. It's just not fair.
Didn't I don't know what they call it, the supreme leader of Australia say that they were going to beat this disease just by being Australian?
No. You know what he said? He did admit. So the Prime Minister of Australia said, first of all, this is the biggest thing that's hit us in 100 years. And he acknowledged every 100 years something like this hit. And then he says, for the next 6 months, 6 months, life will be a mess. And then he gets pressured and he goes, I don't know, let's just resume our lives. And that boils down to the whole thing about the economic pressure of being a political leader. But he's just a mess anyhow.
Okay, but
I
here's
mean, you
the
can
thing.
talk about that.
We have a problem, and the issue is we're trying to solve that problem with the same mindset that we use to create it, and it's not gonna change because we're not getting information. We're not looking at other things. We are not testing this type of stuff, right? And I Am Legend brought up a great concept of this too, is where they started out with the cure to cancer in that movie, and then it ended up being something completely different, and it mutated, right? And started causing all these problems, and everyone died in 3 years, right? And then you've got people saying that this disease was made in a lab, or it came from a pangolin or an infected bat, or no one even knows where it really came from. And do you remember a couple of years ago where they were talking about Ebola and how it was a big deal, and then all of a sudden no one talked about it anymore?
Well,
right?
But also at the same time, we had different leadership, and we had a leadership that was set up for a pandemic. Just keep that in mind. We spoke up. But here's the thing: is when somebody says
the FEMA wasn't any better, like
but
then.
I
mean,
when you have
I don't want to make
this,
it all political, but
no, I'll make it political 100%. When you have a few people that get super sick, and the leadership steps up and says, "This is a big deal. Let's get ready for it." If it failed, great. It's egg in their face because it wasn't a big deal.
Okay, but let me say something.
But you rather that be the egg in the face of being ignoring the situation, and then when it blows up, and you're like, "Whoops, should have said something." And that's one thing.
Yeah, but I don't believe that under a strict Obamacare that we had, we would have been any more ready or had any more testing available. I mean, they're scrambling just as fast as they can to get them from every source they can, and I think that would have been the same regardless of what side of the aisle you'd been on politically.
Okay, but listen.
I mean, I'm gonna step in for a second.
Oh, hi, Liberty.
That's what I do. Hi, me again. We can't solve how or why this happened, or the political involvement, which is quite complicated. And yes, that's all I will say. I guess what I want to know is, how are we, these people in this podcast, and the people, our friends and our family, the people who are connected to us, how are we dealing with that? And what do we do? Gary, how has it affected you and your life? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I work from home now. I don't go shopping unless I have to. Do I go over to my son's house? Yes.
And he shouldn't, because Josh still has to work around people.
And I understand.
Do you wear a mask when you go shopping?
Yes.
And how did you get that?
You can get them anywhere. I sell them.
Oh, we have supplies. Yeah, just because we've
Yeah.
Hey,
but yes, it has.
I mean, I made my own, and it was not good. Tried. I'm just curious.
I have cornholio.
How is this affecting us? The people. We've read all of the news articles. We don't need to hear that again. Let's talk about
You know how it's affecting us, Liberty?
Yeah.
We're living through it. We're living through it, just like any other society. Like Bill said, when the Spanish influenza was going through, how did it affect them? They probably thought, a portion of them, that it was the apocalypse.
Yeah.
And it was a sign of the apocalypse.
Yep.
But then they got past it. And probably some of them got cool tattoos that said, "I survived the Spanish flu." I plan to get one that says, "I survived COVID-19."
Okay, but,
or whatever.
but the whole thing is, when people say that, we say we're living history right now. Everybody will say the same thing. We're living history. But how many people here in grammar school were taught about the Spanish flu? No one just raised their hand, and that's the thing.
We were taught about it. We were taught about it in school. I don't think it was in grammar school.
Did you?
I think I heard about it, but I don't
that's
know.
50 million people. If we lost 50 million people right now, we'd be devastated. It would change the way we do everything. And of course, like Ryan pointed out, there was no Twitter and Facebook and things like that. Nobody was going to post a picture of them being in their apartment in 1916 going, here I am living in the flu and look at me. We didn't live in that world, so nobody knew. And now these pictures are popping up of people walking down the street with their masks, empty. It was right after World War I, and people warned about the flu. And by the way, there's two things that happened during this time. First of all, the flu came in, and everybody went into hiding. And then all of a sudden somebody said, well, I think that's been long enough. And they came back out, and a second wave of the flu came back out. And that's a thing that could very much happen now. And people look at that as, I did a little bit of research. I saw very little of people pointed this at the end of the world. And maybe it was, did we lean towards, maybe we didn't have those resources. Maybe people didn't know. I couldn't share with my neighbor 3 blocks away that I thought God was trying to kill us all, or that the devil was after us, or just that we were bad people. I don't know. I don't know why that was the case. Well, now that I see people saying, and by the way, I will give credit to, I have people saying like, we'll get this through thoughts and prayers. Like, I think those days are over. I don't think we have those thoughts and prayer days over anymore. But there are still people that are saying, trust in God, you're going to get through this. Or I've been seeing God's punishing us. And I'm kind of really torn, because when I see that, when somebody says God's punishing us, why now? What did we do that God punished us for this? And I think it's a weird thing for me.
Well, because the Bible says any day. It's not going to be any day. They're just going to, it's like a pop quiz, man. You're not going to know. You can't just get your shit in order till a week before it's going to happen.
Well, I think sorry,
go
Tom.
ahead.
I think that if there's any deity that is trying to punish us, it would be Mother Earth, right? Because of all the shit.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And, she's the one that makes all the viruses and all the crap anyway, right? It's one of those things where people have been saying that this has been created in a lab and is some sort of weapon of mass destruction, and I think that's crap because A, it's not strong enough. Yeah, it's killing people, but it's also only killing certain amounts of people. If this is a weapon of mass destruction, the only way they could be strategically placed is the fact that it's so easy for people to get. And if that's the case, the next iteration of the virus is going to be the bad one. And people aren't thinking ahead. They're thinking of, okay, I can't go out and get McDonald's and toilet paper to wipe my ass, so let's just stay at home and throw fits about it and put hearts on the windows, and maybe someone walking by will see the heart. I mean, no one cares, right? The issue is what's going to happen.
If you see someone's heart on the window, are you just going to flip it off and keep going? Come on, man.
I've been putting dicks in the only person that stopped is Tom.
Me again. I'm sure you love this, but actually, you just said this, Ryan. Why are people hoarding toilet paper?
Because they're stupid.
No, here's the thing. Okay, so
why is that the first thing?
Because it's a comfort. It's everyone's hoarding comfort.
Well, but my comfort is like mashed potatoes. So.
Well, okay, but it's the expansion of 5.
Everybody who's gained 30 pounds since this quarantine started.
It's the expansion of 5.
Food.
Yeah, but that was the toilet paper hoarding.
I can tell you why.
Like day 1.
I have reasons for this too.
COVID-15 is like me 30 days later.
Liberty, if you wrote on Facebook, by the way, I just went to the store and they're almost out of toilet paper. Okay, if you wrote that on Facebook, 5 people are going to go, oh my God. At least 5 people are going to go, oh my God. I have to run to the store and get more toilet paper. And if 2 or if even just all of them wrote, hey, I just heard Winco's running out of toilet paper, they're going to spread that to their 5 people and go.
Oh yeah, that's totally propaganda. Sensationalism.
It is. It really, really is. It's the same way that the fact that this is how Tiger King became such a big thing.
This is how things go viral.
I know, but the same reason everybody goes.
But how
Charmin is the
start?
company that started the virus and then let
There
it
we go.
loose.
Tonya got it. And thanks for listening tonight. Good night.
Those damn bears.
And please tell us the origin myth, Tonya.
Huh? The origin myth?
Well,
Oh,
Wait,
and
It was,
before you get into that, hold on.
and,
Charmin
like,
started Tiger King.
Yeah,
And
Ryan's been
But,
trying to
like,
say something
what?
for like 5 minutes. Ryan, go
Go
for
ahead,
it.
Ryan.
Okay, so when this first started, no one really knew what the symptoms were, and a lot of people were saying they were flu-like symptoms. So flu-like symptoms for most people are fever, achy pains, shits, vomiting, right?
And they need more. And they need more cowbell. But go.
Right, exactly. So what's going on is now they're looking for things that they need during the time that they're sick, right? No one was hoarding 7-Up or Sprite. They were more worried about cleanliness, because cleanliness is a big deal when it comes to passing disease, right? So that's why the hand sanitizer went. That's why the toilet paper went. That's why, hand soap, all that stuff went out the window because everyone was trying to buy it, right? Because they reacted before they had the information that was necessary or pertinent to the situation.
Because we're cattle, and they tell us, hey, the CDC said masks don't do anything, yet our governor says continue to wear your masks because it'll make you feel better.
Well,
Don't do shit.
here's the thing about masks, right? It does stop the spread of those respiratory illnesses if you have the right mask, right? But that's like saying the same
Right,
thing.
but they're allowing any mask. They're just telling you to wear any mask. I mean, it's propaganda. That's why people buy stuff. It's sensationalism, and it really is just perception. I really think that apocalypse, even if you look at it religiously, is just something that is painted out there to put all of our fears on, because it doesn't matter. It's like, take the Native Americans, right? They showed up, we gave them smallpox, it went from the East Coast to the West Coast and killed them all. I bet that there was sensational stories told before that. I bet they went out and gathered their toilet papers, and they all prayed to their gods.
Okay,
And they all
hold on.
died.
You mentioned
Was
the
that
mask.
an apocalypse to them? I bet it was. Was
Okay,
it an
hold on.
apocalypse for everybody else? Sure as hell wasn't.
You mentioned the mask. Okay, now here's the thing. Mask is a generalized term for what they're putting on their faces. But they don't understand that there are different types of masks, like the reminder mask, hey, don't touch your face, understand social distancing, versus the ones that have the carbon lining in them that prevent, the spread of the disease, right? One is to help the person understand the mindset, while the other one is more of a physiological concept, right? So the idea of having a mask should help either way, as long as they're still practicing those safe distancing.
As long as you're getting a new mask every day and practicing these things, which nobody's going to do. I mean, you're more likely to contract that crap with the mask that you wear day in and day out for a week.
Well, you should, that's where the hygiene
but,
comes into play, right?
Well, it's naivety. It's where we all come from as people. That's why we always go down these same paths in history that lead us to either war or famine or disease spreading. I mean, honestly, the Black Plague didn't have to have so many iterations.
So we're beyond the past of ignorance is bliss. And I say this in the aspect of, we actually now we've created so much that we can't be ignorant to what's going on. But you think about the ignorance is bliss beyond the fact of us having any sort of brain function to create our own death. So you think about the fact that when Earth actually created life, and how many millions and millions of years dinosaurs and other life forms existed. And never once did another dinosaur turn to another dinosaur and said, hey, did you ever see Barry the Brontosaurus? He has a cough over there. Stay 6 feet away from him. Like, we didn't live in that world because we didn't create that. And then they get wiped out by a meteor. Again, this is my own opinion from everything I was learned through school. I learned it did. But now we live in this world where it's like we're creating things that are going to destroy us. So if we ignore them, we could have gone our whole life just being dumb and lived 1,000,000 years. Man could have lived for 1,000,000 years, but we got a little too smart. And we created this world where now we need to be smarter than ourselves. So Tom, with what you're saying with we have to have these, we've created a world now where this period, we have to have the better masks. And we have to have the better science. And Ryan, you're saying like the mask represents the 6 feet away from each other. We're too smart. And now even the dumb people need to be as smart as the smartest people. And that's the thing that's going to fail because they're not. So when you go outside and you see the people that say, well, I know we shouldn't be around people and we should be 6 feet apart from it, but nah, I'm smarter than that. I'm better than that. I'm going to hang out with those other people.
Yeah.
That's our demise. So
I don't know if
ignorance
it's
is
smart
bliss.
versus dumb as much as ethical versus unethical. Like I see
Ignorance
people,
is bliss can never be a saying ever again. Ignorance is bliss is gone. We never can have that saying. It's dead. We had to actually be smarter than we have to be smarter than the other the person next to us.
Okay, so we have been talking
I'm
for an
down for
hour.
that.
We should either wrap it up or go back
Natural
to
selection.
our
The
original
end of the
topic
world.
and then figure out a way to wrap it up.
Thanks for our producer, Tonya, for jumping in over that. I do think I said this could be, as long as it's not the end of the world, we'll have more podcasts. I want to get a little bit of, Gary, I love that you've been on here and you've had some really good insight. I do want to get a little bit of your thought on a spiritual end, because I know that you're very intuitive, you're very connected to the way that religion is looking at this. You're deep in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So you're on the kind of the other side of where we're at. We're all in Idaho here. And I want to get your thought religiously how you look at this.
Okay, so I look at it this way. What I'm seeing, I'm excited about what's happening. Not the death, not the misery that people are going through, but I'm seeing a move of God working through this. I'll use an example. The church that I go to we're having church online. So you don't go to the building, you're not around people, but we do that all the time. We go to a church building, we have live praise and worship, and then we watch it on video. So we're used to watching it on video. And since this has started, other churches that don't have that have live interaction every Sunday, they don't have that option, right? They have to figure out, how are we going to have church? So we're seeing, I think last weekend we had 25,000 different churches sign on to the platform with us. And so we're having a church with millions and millions of people every Sunday. So to me, that's exciting. The whole idea for us is to get the message out. And Ryan had said something about a God that's mad at us or something. I can't remember exactly what you said, but I don't see that. He's been telling us, get ready, get ready, get ready. In fact, even the disciples asked Jesus when he said all these things are going to happen. They were expecting the end to happen then. His disciples were expecting the end. Every generation, even the scripture says, wait a minute, you've been saying this forever. My ancestors said the same thing. That's a scripture. So it's exciting to me to see the other side of that. It's terrible what's happening because it is real. There are people dying and it is misery and that's sad. But he's told us forever these things are going to happen. Get ready. Does that mean that I'm not affected? No, it doesn't mean. He doesn't promise that I'll never be touched or affected. But it's exciting to see the other side of that when something bad happens, from my viewpoint, I'm looking at the side, but what is God doing on the other side of that? So from my perspective, I see that.
Do you think that the religious base is increasing over this? Do you think that more and more people are leaning towards religion and God because of what's going on?
Remember what happened when 9/11 happened for the first day or two, right? People kind of got religious for a while, right? I'll use an example again last weekend because we had so many different churches, 25,000 different churches on the same platform. There's a place on there at the end of the service that says, hey, if you'd like to dedicate yourself to Christ, raise your hand. And I think I forgot the number. I think it was like 110,000 people did that. So yeah, we're seeing numbers like we've never seen before. So yeah,
that's awesome.
People are. Now, will they stay devoted? Who knows, right? I mean, that's up to them. But
they're fervent right now.
Right, exactly.
I mean,
and we've seen it at 9/11. The same people did the same thing, right? They were excited for a while. And then after a while,
Right.
like, okay, maybe things are all right. I don't need to really hang around. But I'm excited about that side of it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not excited about the people that are suffering. That's terrible. But on the other side of that, we're expecting that. I mean, it's going to happen. Those things are going to come to pass. So yeah,
absolutely.
I'd be bad. I'd feel
Liberty,
bad for
go.
myself. But
Liberty had something to say. Go.
It's like literally one sentence. It sounds like part of what's happening, in addition to people, like renewing their faith and all of those things, but a community of people from, your town or county or state or world, a community of people are coming together. And I think that's important and worth acknowledging, however that plays out.
Right, and that's a good side of it. There is a bad side, but that is a good side of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I need to point out, though, that's kind of a big exciting thing about this, as the podcast has progressed, and no one will know this, Ryan has got closer and closer to
I noticed. I just watched him do an eyebrow dance.
Ryan keeps getting closer to his computer, and it's a beautiful
He's trying to touch you and give you the COVID.
He must not have an opinion, right? That's what's happening.
Ryan, I'd love to know your opinion on everything we just talked about while you're that close to the computer.
I understand that hope is a big, important thing, and everyone who has it has a sense of security that things are going to be all right, and that's great. Whether that's from God or whether it's from, restoring faith in humanity, hope is great, and it's something that can help a lot of situations. That being said, it happens every time something happens.
Oh, yeah.
And, if people were really, truly devoted to God or to helping people, it wouldn't just happen every 6 months when something happens. It would just stay that way, period.
I agree with you.
I kind of feel like the apocalypse and God and everyone saying, hey, I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back. It's going to happen. I kind of feel like it's a biblical crying wolf where...
Well, yeah, but the whole idea is that you live in a constant state of readiness, and that's what I was making a point of earlier. It's because the people who weren't ready, they're the people who suffer. I mean, it's biblical because it makes sense as a whole concept.
Okay, but
and right now we're not... Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I'll talk to you in a minute. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we're not living in anything different than people have lived in before. We're just looking at it in a different way. It's like, this is exactly the same way that people lived in Britain when they were getting bombed. It's the whole keep calm and carry on thing. You're just going to have to they didn't shut down their whole world. They kept doing what they could do, and they just made it the best they could, not knowing what the future was going to be. And that's the best we can do right now, because it doesn't really matter how you define apocalypse. If it's death, it's either the death of a person, the death of a whole belief system, or the death of a nation or a society. Man, the fall of Rome was probably Rome's apocalypse. We're on the edge of that too. Hell, we keep giving out money like this, we're going to be on Rome's heels, and that'll be an apocalypse. It'll be the same damn thing.
You're right there, but you're also kind of wrong too. The whole concept of the apocalypse wasn't to just end everything. It was to show the truth behind the actual people who earned divinity and earned God and who were the faithful towards God versus the people who didn't and who could be separated by false belief and false structure. Because when this happens, the people who claim God and the true God and divinity, they weren't just like, okay, you guys go over there and we're going to go over here. They were tortured and they were punished, right? And the whole concept behind that is it's not really the end, it's the separation of the sword. It's the one side versus the other. It's the truth versus the fallacy. And when it comes to the end of transition or an end of death, it's always one way or another. It's a spectrum that people aren't understanding, right? And the apocalypse isn't so much the end of life as we know it, but the separation of the worthy versus the not. And when it comes to the coronavirus or any other pandemic or any other concept, we as humans tend to band together only when it's beneficial for us to do so. And that's what's frustrating to me. Right? Do you understand that, Gary? I mean, does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I agree with you. It is frustrating knowing that some people that are coming now, 2 weeks from now, won't care.
Right.
They'll be back to doing whatever they want. And that part is frustrating because you'd like to say, gee, I wish you were devoted to what you're saying. It's great to see you are. And who's to judge, right? I mean, I can't judge. If you said today, you said, I'm devoted to it. Who am I to judge it next week you're not going to be? Right.
It's like the fair weather baseball teams, right? Where if they're winning, they're great. But when they're not, everyone hates them and they're going to go jump to some other. It's like all these people are snowmen where they only stick around during the times that it's convenient for them and melt away when it's not. And that's
and that's the thing is, are we going to learn from this when people say like the days of the handshake is over? Is it? Are we all going to stop shaking hands tomorrow? Are we all going to fist bump? I lived in there was a good 3 years of my life when I lived in Atlanta where I fist bumped everybody. That was miserable. I hated the fist bump. Like it was just the most bro-tastic thing I've ever had to do. I hated it. But are we done shaking hands? Are we done? Not wearing. Or people say like,
I'm not personally. I've shaken hands during this. If I put my hand out, I haven't had any resilience about anybody grabbing my hand.
And why is that?
It's going to be a societal thing. It's going to be hard to kill.
I've shaken no hands during this, Tom. So what? But by the way, I should say prior to this starting, I'm sorry that I'm going to blurt you out for this. You had 2 people in your house prior to this started, and you said, "Oh, I'm going to school. I'm doing this thing." But it's like, why did you feel that was a good thing?
I mean, like it depends on how you want to go into this. But like I figured, honestly, I don't feel like I'm going to die. I feel like that's been blown over. I have kids. I don't feel like my kids are going to die. Are we going to get sick? Yeah, very possibly. But is there a hospital near here? Yes. Do we live in 2020 and the 21st century? Yeah, absolutely. Am I really that worried about it? Not as worried as I'd be if I got bitten by a rattlesnake.
But wouldn't you rather live in a world where you said you didn't have to live in regret? Well, let's just say you did get sick. Let's just say
we live in a world of regret every day, Bill. There's no damn decision we've made as humanity that's led us to something.
Do you know anyone? Do you know anyone who's been affected by this? And do you know anyone who's died?
I have not personally known, but I do have people with friends or like family members who have died attributed to the flu of COVID. Yes.
So I know 5 people who have been who are sick from it, and 1 who died. And they had 4 days from the time that they found out they had it to the day they died, and their family had to watch them die outside the window of the hospital.
Okay, and Bill, can I ask you a question related to that?
Yeah.
Like, what was their health like before all that happened?
Oh, they were early 80s, but it doesn't change the fact that people are dying in their 20s. People are dying in their 30s. It doesn't change the fact that Tom could have shook hands with somebody that he went to school with and then saw his mom or his grandfather or something like that. Like, it doesn't change that fact. Like,
sure, but I also wash my hands consistently and like pathologically almost, and I use hand sanitizer quite often.
Do you think that's enough?
I think that's enough? Well, we have hospital grade soaps. Most people we used. I mean, like they're made to be. What do they call it, Ryan?
What?
It's above sanitation. It's disinfection. You disinfect because you kill all bacteria.
Right. Okay.
Well, that's great, but I'd rather live in a world without regret. I don't want to live in that world where I go, I wish I didn't.
But I don't want to live in a world
of
fear.
But that's fine. I'd rather live in a world of
other side of
taking precaution than regret. That's it. That's my whole point.
The way that I handle this is, 1, no, I don't want to get it because I don't have health insurance right now, and that would not be great. I don't want to pass it to somebody else. That's my thing, is I care about the people that I'm around enough that I'm willing to stay away from them and act like I'm infected because I don't want them to get infected. I feel like that's the mindset that people need to have is, sure, if you don't care about yourself and you don't care if you get infected, whatever, but I care if someone else that I know gets infected. And if it came from me, then I would be devastated.
Tonya made a great point. Live the world like you're infected. Go, Ryan.
Right, but here's the thing. While you guys are doing that and everyone else is doing that, for every one person that is, there are 5 people that aren't. And that's where the concept of illness spreading exponentially comes into play. Because if you out of 5 people, if one of them stays away but the other 4 get infected, those 4 infect 4 more, then those 4 becomes 15, and so on and so forth.
We have essential people. The bullshit is we have essential people, and it doesn't really matter. Like, I love the whole concept and the thought process behind what you're saying, Tonya, and I totally, like, in concept agree with you. But the reality is, like Ryan said, 5 out of 6 people aren't doing that, and 6 out of 6 of those people are still going to the grocery store and still touching all of that crap. And it doesn't matter how many times they're spraying that down an hour. Like, the reality is you're going to get it from touching a doorknob that you're going to have to touch.
Or pumping gas.
You're going to get it from anywhere. Like, I'm not going to get it from somebody shaking hands, because generally the people I know that shake hands, we all wash hands. If it doesn't happen occasionally, well, then we all were taking that risk anyway. Like, we lived in a world of risk. But Tom, right now I feel like that's not really the issue.
But Tom, there's this. If I can reduce those chances, if I can, during my day, I had to maybe
you have
go
all
to the
of your groceries delivered to you right now, Bill? Or are they all
I'm telling you this, Tom. Let me finish. If my choices are this throughout the day, I have to wake up and I do have to go to the store and I do have to get gas. So I'm very careful when I go to the gas station. I'm very careful when I go to the store. I risked my life twice that day. I risked myself. But then maybe if somebody goes, oh, no, hold on. But then maybe like, now some friends want to hang out. Or maybe I'm going to hang out with my grandparents. Or maybe I'm going to see some friends for drinks later. I've just quadrupled the chances of everything I've ever done. And that's the thing I don't want to do. I'm going to limit my chance. Listen, I can't live in a box. And I have to get food, and I have to get gas, and I have to do these things. But I don't have to do them 20 times a day. I maybe only have to do them twice. And that's where it comes down to.
But I'm not having parties, Bill.
Yeah, and Bill, Tom's agreeing with you. The whole concept is that you're both saying the same thing in different ways and then arguing about it. It's like the domino effect, right? If you have 150 dominoes and you knock one down, depending on where it's at, all of them are going to fall down too, right?
Yeah, Bill, you're the reason, and I'm the reality, and that's the difference. Like, well, I get it. You're the reason.
Liberty, we still can't hear you. You keep talking, but there's no sound.
Liberty, you know what Liberty's saying right now? Hey, Bill, you're right, and Tom's wrong. I'm saying the way she's saying right now. Hey, Tom, shut up. Because Bill, I could read lips, and she's saying, Tom, why don't you listen to Bill more? Everything he says is correct.
Okay, hold on.
He's really handsome.
I'm going to interject. Hold on. Did you know that everyone is saying stay 6 feet away, but in reality, respiratory illnesses can go up to 13 feet in the air?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. If you sneeze, that shit's going far and fast.
Or the fact
also why you shouldn't go anywhere.
Well, right.
Did you hear that?
Or
yes, I did.
The whole concept of it can stay on porous surfaces for up to 3 hours, right? So, so I know me as a barber and Tom as a barber, we have been taught some very drilled into our heads the concept of disinfection versus cleansing and versus cleaning and wiping things down, right? So that's something that it's one of those things where we constantly are doing it, right? But that also doesn't stop everything. So Bill, you're right on that, where limiting what you're doing can limit the effect of the spread. Tom, you're also right by saying you don't have to live in fear of it as long as you're consciously aware of it. And I'm sure Liberty's right when she's saying nothing that I can hear, but I'm hearing her say that
you're my favorite.
She's one of those people that can, or what she's saying is this whole concept is not going to get any better unless we all take part in our responsibility in stopping it from happening.
Okay, so I'm going to say this. This is how we're going to end this. Ready?
No, wait. Okay, you end it and then I end it. Or me first and then you?
No, Liberty
go.
Okay. Is this...
Okay, now it's your turn. All right, no, there you go.
Is this the rapture?
Well,
no.
There we go. You asked the same question.
And what is that? Is that the thing where
nobody's disappearing?
I look around and either I'm not here or other people aren't here.
Well, I feel the rapture is different than the apocalypse, correct?
It is. The rapture
Gary,
is
these are different things.
But I don't know, and maybe Gary can help shed some light. This is not my expertise. Are they closely related?
Closely related in
Or
a
I'm
time
just making shit
frame.
up.
No, this isn't the rapture. Is that one step of getting to the very end? Yes, but not related to direct. But Ryan also had an opinion, I think.
Well, I have a thought too. I think Liberty's asking because she wants to know if she's going up or down. And I think I already know where she's going, but that's another question.
Well, it's kind
I
of
think
like
she
this.
knows.
If you're in college and you have crappy math grades, the rapture's like the football coach who gives you the pass. So if you're going to fail, the rapture's like, here you go. You're not failing suddenly. Have you done anything? Have you been playing football, Liberty?
I guess I'm going to end it with this. Is there anybody, I know that we've talked a lot about this, but
Everyday football.
unless anybody feels differently, I think we all agree this is not the apocalypse. And if anybody
We'll be here next
I know that we say that there's this vague aspect of the apocalypse isn't bullet points. There's a vagueness. If there's what's going to happen, it's going to be this and this, and maybe we're building our own. We don't know. Like I said, the dinosaurs were around for this long. We're at this little tiny end, and we're already screwing it up. We're like messing it up big time.
okay.
Does
But
anybody go? What?
so the reason why we're screwing it up is because we have higher consciousness and the ability to think. If we all
break
just,
things.
yeah, if we all just ran on basic instinct and we didn't have the concept for anger or the concept for philosophy or the concept for greed, we would all be okay with our own little pixel of this giant blue planet that we live on. The problem is we have the capability for higher thinking, and that's where things go astray, grow in many different directions.
That's where we invent a boogeyman.
Right. But
So, can I say something real quick? This is the conversation for another day. When anytime anybody ever says there's a planet with higher life on it or higher intelligence of life that's going to come to us, I feel that before this higher intelligence would ever get smart enough to ever come to us, they just destroy themselves. I've actually felt that my entire life. There's no way that there's a planet with smarter life that wouldn't destroy themselves before they would come to. And that's my thought.
Wouldn't it make more?
We're a giant Jerry Springer show.
Wouldn't it make more sense to kill off the idiots on the planet and then take the planet for yourself? Right?
Don't planet or our planet.
Kill the planet and use the resources.
Well, assuming that they can live off our oxygen level and our gravity.
Okay, but here's another. Okay, if we're going to look at it that way, we can say that from the beginning we've evolved. From the first day until now, we've constantly been evolving. It would make more sense to cut. It would make more sense to cut the head off the snake now before it starts to infect the rest of the universe. So if
Ryan, real quick, will we make it to the next galaxy over before we kill ourselves?
I vote no.
Thank you. Anyone else? Tom?
I don't think so.
Liberty?
I vote men are from Mars and women are from Venus.
Okay.
We might make it to Mars.
Gary, will we make it to another galaxy before we kill ourselves?
Also, I don't know.
No.
Thank you. All right, Ryan, you're the last vote.
I think that if we were going to, I think we have more problems to worry about on our own planet before we try.
That's too long of an answer. All right. So anyway, Ryan says no, and Liberty thinks men are stupid. Beyond that, we all think that we're going to destroy ourselves before we make it to another galaxy, and I feel that way because we're on the cusp of self-annihilation, and it's fun because it's great.
It's going to take us to destroying ourselves before we form something like a federation to be able to get our.
Could you imagine in 2 billion years? In 2 billion years, how cool the cockroach men will look that lived through this whole thing? It's going to be. They're going to be fucking cool. It's going to be really, really cool. All right.
Bill, I don't understand why you think anyone from Mars is stupid. Just saying. I didn't say that.
Well, I know when you say Mars, you mean men. and
Made
we're
a
all
dumb
dumb.
joke, and now
Well,
it's
you
There's
could also-
four. No, there's four guys on here, and we're all
Backtracking.
idiots. There's four guys on here,
I
and
love
we're
you
all
all.
idiots, and I get it. And there's
Guilty.
two women on here, and they're
Guilty.
super smart. And we don't get.
No.
Gary and I already had a conversation about being in a kitchen earlier today, and we lost that conversation. So
Wow.
So with that.
Regardless,
All right, wrap it up.
people
Well,
from
there you go.
Paris-
we're
Who's
wrapping
doing
it
the
up.
cooking
Did
in
you
the
hear that?
house?
Tanya said
Let
wrap
it
it
go.
up.
Person.
Okay.
All right. Anyone have anything else they want to add?
I just think what
Why
we're
are you
doing.
asking that when you said wrap it up?
I know, Tanya said wrap it up, and I'm saying Rango.
I think that we're on the brink of a bigger problem, and I think that unless we find a way to solve it, the next iteration is going to be a lot worse, and that's when things are going to really start getting hairy. And like as for your planet concept, is the reason why we're all going to annihilate ourselves before we go someplace else is because until then we really have no real inspiration to leave, right? If we have everything we need here and everything's easy, we have no natural reason to adapt. And without that reason to adapt, we won't look for, the next thing we need to survive. And I think that until that happens, we'll all just okay with treating people the way that we perceive to be treated and just try to live that way as best we can.
Well, we've needed to adapt for 100,000 years, so it just sadly it needs to be a lot quicker. So, all right,
At the end
Gary.
of this podcast.
Gary, anything else you want to add?
Hang on. You're going to have plenty to talk about on episode 28.
Yes.
All right, Liberty, anything you want to add?
You have no volume.
Nope.
What I would like to add is that I am not very good at unmuting myself.
You're really bad at it.
Also, first of all, everyone, thank you. This was an amazing discussion. Gary, your last comment. That was good. And then
I will say that
no, here's what's gonna happen. I'd be like, and then Ryan, your last comment, changed my life. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm really upset that people aren't going to see your jazz hands in this when you speak.
I know. I'm sorry.
They're so good.
Because I am eyebrows.
You're so yeah.
But
It's so
Okay.
good.
but thank you
I think-
everybody for letting me be a guest.
Yeah.
Tom, what do you got for us, Tom?
I think scientifically, we just have to realize that some people are going to die no matter what we do. That's just going to, it's a virus. That's how it works. And honestly, if we don't go out there and develop an immunity to this as a population, the next one is going to kill us anyway. That's how it works. So we better get an immunity to this and realize that, I'm sorry, some people are going to die. That's the way of it, biblically or however you want to look at it.
You sound like Thanos.
And Black Widow Tanya, do you have anything you want to say?
This has been a great conversation. We meant to have kind of a talk about the end of the world, the end days, and obviously we were talking about it because of the pandemic that's going on. And just kind of hearing everyone's thoughts about how they cross over has been great. Thank you, Dad, for being on here. It's been really fun having you to be a part of this. And I don't see it as the end of days. I see it as kind of how Ryan brought up the pandemic that happens around every 100 years. It's basically just nature happening. We just need to do what we can to get through it, be smart, be safe. And the one good thing I feel that's coming out of this is I feel like even though everyone is socially distancing, a lot more people are actually becoming closer during this and talking to
Connected,
people that
yeah.
they care about. And there is good that's coming out of it. That's
All right, so my last thoughts on this one is clearly we live in a situation now where it's day by day. We're sitting in our house, we're watching Tiger King, we're sharing stuff, but I think we've learned that life can end tomorrow. We've watched people around us die even prior to this. And I think one of the things that I've learned over the last year and a half, 2 years, is how valuable every day is. Every day is so valuable in the things that you make of it. And if whether you want that day to be what you created today and how it stands on today, or every day that when you create something that it's going to be your legacy, that's your own personal religion in the sense, is how you want to end your day falling asleep saying, how did I feel at the end of the day, and feel good? Do I feel that this is combining a nation or separating a nation? I 100% feel that this is separating a nation. I feel that you have these people that yesterday, like I said, I took a picture from far away of the capital of Boise of people who were separating against that they were liberating. And I saw this group of people on social media saying, I'm going to stay home. And that's great. Live your life and bring the people around you that want to make your life the best that you want to make it. And that's what I'm doing. I'm hanging around the people like you guys who I love, and we're all living our lives. And I've been in communication with all of you guys from afar. Because I know that a year from now we're all going to be there, and we're going to be smart and cool and be there. This is a time to make your statement and live the life you want to live, and that's the way that I feel. And don't listen to anyone. Make your own educated opinions and do smart things. And we're all going to get through this. This is not the biggest thing that's happened in the last 100 years. It's big. It's not the biggest. So we're all going to get through it. We're going to be smart, and we're all going to get through it.
And the very last thing before we finish, the namesake of this podcast, Eat, Drink, and Be Scary. Obviously, we talked about the scary part. The eat and drink is whatever we have in our fridges. I'm having White Claw.
Tom, what are you drinking?
I was having some soft huckleberry wine earlier.
Liberty? I know you were drinking wine.
Yeah, well, I couldn't find anything that seemed end of the worldy, but I got a wine called Lefty.
Which is good if you're a liberal. So that's good. If you're drinking righty,
and also,
that's good.
I thought because, Bill, Tonya, Sinestre, but whatever, it's a pretty label.
Gary, what are you
if
drinking?
You're not taken, you're left.
Gary, what are you drinking?
Kool-Aid. Sorry.
All right, Jeffrey Jones, thanks. Ryan, what do you got?
Spam and Mountain Dew.
All right, well, I was drinking Boise Brewing Witch's Tip, which is the Witch's Tip is gone. That's what I was drinking tonight. So anyway, you guys, this was clearly not our funniest podcast. But I'm not going to lie, this is one of my favorites. I think this is really real compared to the way we, other than the fact that when Ryan brought mummy testicles to
and Tom
podcast.
licked it.
That was my favorite podcast.
That was a pretty good podcast. But this is a really good one.
It was the most flavorful.
And this is great. And thanks, everybody. And be safe. I love you guys. And we'll all talk
Every
really
new
soon.
beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Right, Bill? Is that a good thing for the
Amen.
apocalypse?
And brother. All right. Good night.
Good night.